to start over. This is the Dalles Chamber. This is Lisa. And we have asked Greg Price. He is the director for the Small Business Development Center right here in our backyard in the Dalles. And as you know, Oregon is working closely with the SBDC so that we make sure that our clients, businesses, and individuals are taken care of in each of our communities regarding the PPP, and then helping to at least advise or direct them to the right direction for the EIDL and any other options that might be available to our small businesses. I ask that you mute your mics as it makes it easier with this many people on here. We are recording this, so we will have it available to you later with any notes, presentations from our speaker will be attached with it. We ask that you use the chat box if you're able, and you're not just on the phone. If you are on the video part of it, you can type your notes in and ask questions. We will have a spot where we do Q&A, so those who are on the phone option and do not have access to that chat, we will ask those questions. And hopefully Greg can either refer you to the right direction or answer those for you up front. So at this point in time, Greg, welcome, and we so appreciate you last minute jumping in here for us and our businesses and giving us some updates in regards to all of this and our options for our businesses. At that point, it is all yours.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you for all your support, both you and Katie, and all your hard work. And just want to urge everybody here, if you are not members of the Chamber of Commerce, we know times are tight and you're managing your cash flow, but when things get back to some level of normalcy, I'd really strongly urge you to become members. They have such a valuable part that they play in our business community and the community at large. So thank you again, Lisa and Katie. I am going to switch over and share my screen here with everybody. Okay, are you seeing that? Yeah? Okay, great. So, my name is Greg Price. I am the director at the Small Business Development Center at the Columbia Gorge Community College. And today, I'm gonna just tell you really briefly about the services we provide at the SBDC. Talk about the federal incentives in detail, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program and the Paycheck Protection Program, but also a number of the other incentives that may be available to you both from the federal government as well as some of the state, local, and national programs, grants, funding sources that may also be really helpful for you right now. So the SBDC is the largest certified business advising network in the state and in the country. In Oregon, we have 19 different centers. We are located at community colleges. 17 of those are community colleges. And how we operate is we get funding through the federal government, through the Small Business Administration, as well as through the state, through Business Oregon. And then we have a match from our local community college. So because of that, most of our services we're able to provide for free. So one of the things that we do a lot of is one-on-one advising. We consult and advise small businesses in any and every aspect of their business, from concept of your business, drafting a business plan, getting funding, loan packages, selling your business, web design, business technology, you name it. We can meet you wherever you're at. We also do a number of training programs, both in person and online. We do a lot of community outreach and customized training and economic development programs, especially here with very rural communities. That's a really important part of our function, similar to what we're doing here today. The easiest way for you to connect with us and either learn more about what we do or get one-on-one advising from the SBDC is register with us. I provided a link here. There's another one at the end of this presentation. You can go to bizcenter.org and learn more about the different tools that we provide, the resources we offer, the different centers from the Global Trade Center to Capital Access Team, franchising, cybersecurity, just a huge range of services that we offer. But you register here, and as soon as you do, we will reach back out to you and schedule some time to connect. The first program I want to go through, and I'm going to run through this stuff pretty quick because I think a lot of people know a lot of this by now, but there's also a lot to cover. And please, if you have questions, write them in the chat bar, and I'm happy to go back through any of this in more detail. So the eligibility for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, which I will refer to here on out as the EIDL program, is small businesses, sole proprietors, self-employees, contractors, private nonprofits, tribal small businesses, cooperatives, and employee-owned businesses. So that's a lot of eligibility. Unfortunately, farms aren't covered in that, lobbying entities, and public nonprofits. This is a loan program up to $2 million. It's 3.75 for-profit, 2.75 nonprofit. And when you apply to this program, there's only one place you can apply to this, and that is with the SBA. And just so you know, you'll get this presentation at the end of this with all this information and all the links to this information, including where to apply. But that streamlined application is only about 3-4 pages long, and you need to provide some of your financial information, some income, your name, social security number, tax ID, employee ID, as well as your bank account information. And this is all necessary for the SBA to verify who you are, both as a business as an individual, and also to provide direct deposit for the funding when you get it. That's why they're asking for your bank account information. At the end of it, you will have the opportunity to be eligible for a grant. And it says a $10,000 advance. That is, in all essence, a grant. And one of the things that has recently changed is that is up to a $10,000 grant. You are not guaranteed to get that grant. And it is calculated on, if you were self-employed, a contractor, sole proprietor, it is just $1,000. If you have employees, it is $1,000 per employee up to $10,000. And again, there's no guarantee that you'll get this. The funding time for this is 3 to 5 weeks now. That's what they're stating. And once you are approved through your SBA officer, loan officer, they're saying it's an additional 3 to 5 days before that funding becomes available to you. There is really no way to check the status of your application. Just hold on to your confirmation number. If you have a confirmation number, then you know that you're in the works. They are suggesting that if you applied through one of the earlier applications, I believe it was post March 27th, then you do need to reapply through the simplified application process. And an easy way to know if you've done that or not is if you had to upload or drag and drop a number of different documents, then you applied through the old process and need to reapply. The new process does not ask you to upload anything. You do need to be in business from January 31st of this year. This loan has 1 year of deferment, so you don't have to make payments for 1 year on principal and interest. It is up to a 30-year term, so the payments on this should be pretty small. There's no prepayment penalty, so you can take as much of that loan as you want, hang on to it, use it if you need it, hang on to it if you don't, and at the end of that year, you can pay it off entirely and not incur any interest, and no penalty or fees in doing that. There's no collateral, no personal loan guarantee for loans under $200,000. And this can be used for a wide range of your operating costs for your business. It just can't be used for long-term debt. How they're going to calculate this loan amount is they're going to look at your income, your revenue for the last year, and they're going to basically divide that in half. And whatever that amount is in essence going to be your loan amount. So if it's above $500,000 in total loan amount, the SBA loan officer may do some additional calculations based on collateral and personal guarantees. There is really, as I was saying, there's really no contact information. They do have a hotline. They do have an email address that you can use if you have questions, but it's just very, very slow to reply. So it's a little frustrating. I just urge people to be patient, and we are hearing people who applied first or very early have been contacted by the SBA, both through email and through phone calls. So they're now actively starting to distribute funding through this program just now. The other program is the Paycheck Protection Program. This is a little bit of a bigger program. This is a forgivable loan program. And in essence, it has the same list of eligibility with some special accommodations made in the food service sector and for franchises and for farms. This can be up to $10 million for your loan. And how they calculate the loan is going to be looking at your salary, wages, tips, commission, family, medical, sick leave, payments for healthcare benefits, insurance premiums, retirement benefits, state and local tax assessed on compensation of employee. That does not include federal taxes. Federal taxes are not part of this calculation, and this has come up a number of times. It's not federal tax on the employee or the amount that the federal government is withholding for employees. It's what the federal government is taxing you as an employer. So there's a big difference there. And those federal taxes that are that you are seeing as an employer are the ones that are not eligible under this program. For a sole proprietor or a contractor or self-employed, it's going to be the sum of all of your compensations or income, you minus your expenses and cost of goods sold, capped at $100,000. What's excluded from this payroll cost? Any compensation for any of your employees in excess of $100,000 in annual salary. It has to be capped at that. It can be prorated if it's from February 15th to June 30th. Again, employer payroll taxes, railroad retirement taxes, and federal income taxes. Any compensation to employees whose principal place of residence is outside of the United States, and any tax credit that you are taking for qualified sick leave under Section 7001 or 7003. And this is going to come up a number of times in terms of tax credits and how it plays with this program. And long story short, if you can't take these employee-based tax credits and the payroll protection program. So just bear that in mind. How much of this is going to be forgiven? So once this loan becomes approved and it is originated, they're going to calculate costs, including your payroll and other eligible expenses, from 8 weeks starting from that origination date. And again, this is those payroll costs we just went through. It's also going to include interest on mortgage obligations that pertain to your business, rent on a leasing agreement, not rent for your home, utilities, including electric, gas, water, transportation, which is one that is often missed under utilities, telephone, internet, and then also tips for employees, additional wages paid to those employees. This loan forgiveness can be up to 100% of the loan, but cannot exceed the principal of the loan. So once you get once your loan is originated, you'll have 8 weeks after that, and you will take all of these costs and calculate them, and that is how much you will deduct from those 2.5 months of your payroll expenses that we calculated earlier by taking that payroll for 12 months, averaging it, getting your monthly payroll expense, and multiplying it by 2.5. So even though that 8 weeks hasn't started yet, you can get a historical idea based on costs from last month or from average over the year to get an idea of what might be forgiven. Of course, that might differ based on how many employees you bring back, and that's an important factor in this loan, in that you will be deducted if you do not bring all of your staff back up onto your payroll. You will have to the end of June to bring those people back onto payroll. If you don't or are not able to bring them back onto payroll, then you'll be deducted a proportional percentage off of the amount forgiven. So if you only bring 80% of your employees back, then you will only get 80% of that amount forgiven off of your total loan. That's the same with salary. If your salary that you're paying them is less than 75% of their historical salary of the last 12 months, then you will also have a proportional reduction in the amount that is deducted from your loan. And another important point is that when that amount that's forgiven is calculated, 75% or more can be payroll, or let me rephrase that. Only 25% can be of those approved other expenses outside of payroll. Okay, so that's the most that you can use in that 8 weeks to calculate how much is forgiven in those other expenses. You can have up to 100% of payroll, that's fine, but only up to 25% of those other eligible costs. That's the same with how you use that money. When you get that loan, only 25% of it can be used for those other approved costs outside of payroll. This loan is at 1% interest rate. You do get deferment on principal for 6 months, but not the interest. But that will likely be forgiven anyway. So, and if it's not, it really won't be that much. This loan does come due in 2 years, but it can be carried forward with your local lender at 4%. So these loans can be sold on the third-party market. They can be sold back to SBA by your local lender. And if so, you can get longer terms, so you don't have to pay it all back in 2 years. And they will carry that forward at traditional SBA 7A loan rates of 4%. This is going to be at the prerogative of your local lender. Again, this is a federally backed loan through the SBA, but it is administered by your local lenders. So they will have final say in a lot of this. They do have to be SBA certified lenders. There's very low collateral depending on the size of the loan, no personal guarantee required, and in a lot of cases, no collateral required. And you can apply for both the EIDL and the PPP simultaneously, or one or the other. Right now, there's $30 billion in this fund. It is first come, first serve, but there is legislation in the process right now of, right now it's at $251 billion to refund this program. That's not finalized, but it's pretty certain there will be another big pot of money going into this program. So a couple things to note on how the EIDL and the PPP play together. So first of all, if you take that grant, whatever amount you get from that grant is going to be deducted from the amount forgiven from your PPP. Additionally, if you take the EIDL loan and you use it for payroll, then you will be obligated to refinance the EIDL into the PPP. If you don't do that, you can carry these loans separately. You can roll it into the PPP regardless. That's a conversation you can have with your local lender. But generally, it's a longer term, it's at a lower interest rate, so there's not a lot of reason to do that unless you can potentially get more of your, that 8 weeks of forgiven expense is significantly greater than your total loan amount. Then you may get a little more incentive there. So make sure that you're having these conversations with your local lender, and also understand that you might not be able to have these conversations quite yet with your local lender because they are so busy. And we'll talk a little bit more about the lenders now, and some of the things that we can do in that regards. So some things that can really be helpful in a successful application. One, make sure that you have the correct and complete email address, that correct and complete tax identification number or employer identification number, that you are disclosing all 20% or greater owners of the organization. You need to get all of their financial information, whatever they're asking for those 20% owners or greater. That is stuff that you have to make sure you have and submit. If you are in a C Corp or a business where you have, 10, 20, 30 owners, then you have to make sure that, and they're all under 20%. Let's say you have 10 owners and they're all at 10%. You have to have at least 50% ownership represented in this application. So in that case, it's going to be at least 5 of them. No harm in providing more. Just something to keep in mind, to have that information available. Same with your IRS 941s, your quarterlies for 2019, your payroll ledgers, which are going to be really, really important, that your payroll ledgers are accurate. They're going to want to have it shown broke out by employee, and of course having it capped at $100,000, and your ledger year-to-date 2020, same as the information requests for 2019. In addition to that, we've had a lot of people who have been denied by their local lenders because they have not been able to apply. So there's a couple things going on there. One, Wells Fargo, for example, they had a cap originally in how much they were able to fund because of their bad practices in the past that was imposed on them by the federal government. That cap has been temporarily lifted, so they have been able to take more applications. With other banks, a lot of it is processing power and administrative power, and some of them are halting applications, and they're not necessarily denying all future applications. But one thing that we really need to keep in mind here is that they have had to create this infrastructure for these banks for this entire process, of which they knew nothing about, in a matter of a week. And all of these banks have been working 24/7 to try and make sure they have all the information, of which has been changing day to day, hour to hour, to make sure that they're following the federal guidelines and supporting us as their clients. So we really need to have some patience there, and I get that that's really frustrating. So just keep in close communication. Also note that you can apply with other banks that you don't necessarily have a relationship with. It might take a little longer, and there are some banks that might say, we're only taking applications for existing clients right now. That doesn't mean that that will be the case indefinitely. That just means that's going to be their priority and who they're going to focus their immediate processing power and administration time on. But these things will change. And as banks get caught up, they will reopen to take more applications. But it is going to be the lender's prerogative on how they go about that. The one thing to keep in mind, if you are going to go to another lender that you don't have relationships with, they are going to ask that you start a new business account. They are going to have to verify you as an individual, your bank, your business entity. You're going to have to provide entity of originations, article of incorporation, those kind of documents, so they can verify you. So it may take a little longer, and they may put you at the back of the queue behind their existing clients, and that's understandable. But it is also in their benefit to process as many of these loans as they can. They get paid based on the origination of these loans. So they get a fixed percentage on every loan that they process and administer, in addition to that 1% interest. So they really want to process these loans, and they want to do as many as they possibly can. But they have to follow their own specific guidelines, as well as the guidelines imposed on them by the SBA. So I'm just urging a lot of patience with them. Don't bombard them with a bunch of questions unless they're very urgent, because that does create more of a bottleneck. And then just be very diligent with your applications. If you need help with this, and any of us at the SBD can support us, please reach out. So what does that application process look like? So first, the bank has to identify you. If you already are an existing client, that won't be an issue. I kind of explained what that would look like if you were coming into the bank for the first time as a new client. You'll have to create an account. Likely what a lot of banks are doing now, and this is becoming fairly standard, especially with the larger national banks, is they're creating a streamlined process that's hands-free. And so when you go to your business account, they're creating a portal in your business account for you to just click. It'll say PPP, Paycheck Protection Program, or maybe COVID-19 resources. It could be on their landing page. Likely it's going to be in your business account page. And you can hit that. And that will cue you or bring you to the landing page to apply for the PPP. Then you'll complete that application, again, making sure that it is in full. And then once that is complete and you submit that, that application goes to the underwriters for that specific bank. They will then review your application, and if you have missed anything, then that application has to go all the way back and start over again. And that's why it's really important that you get it right the first time, because it's going to slow you down and it slows them down. Once it does get finally approved, it then gets securely transmitted over to the SBA. The SBA also has to verify this. At that point, it's out of the bank's hand. They don't control that timeline. And right now, the SBA is processing about $1 to $2 billion an hour in lending, which is just absolutely unprecedented. They are working 6-10 hours a day, 24 hours a day, these folks at SBA. So they're working very hard as well. If they have other questions, then it goes back to the bank and then back to you. So again, I'm not trying to ring that bell too loud, but that's really important, again, to make sure the applications are complete. Once it is approved by the SBA, The closing docs will be prepared. They will be sent to you for signing and resubmittal to the bank. And then usually funding, once signed, is 2 to 3 days before you'll get that funding. A number of banks are saying this process is going to take around 2 weeks. We have seen approval already in about a week from one bank in particular, and funds are about to be released on some of these loans. So it really is happening relatively quick, especially if your application is in hold. Okay, so that is that for PPP for now. I'm sure you'll have questions and we can go back to those. A couple other things that I just want to make sure you're aware of, because they can be really impactful if you're eligible. There is the Small Business Debt Relief Program, and if you are a business and you have an SBA loan, a 7A, a 504, a micro loan, you now are eligible for the SBA to cover all loan payments, fees, interest for 6 months. You don't have to apply, you don't have to contact them, you just don't make payments. So that's a fantastic program. Also, they are now extending this to any new applicants. If you are in the process of getting an SBA loan, or you're starting that now, one outside of these EIDL programs or the PPP, from 6 months from when the president declared disaster, which I believe was February 15th, you will also be eligible for those payment coverage by the SBA. So it's for both new loans and existing loans. So that's a really great program. There's also employee retention tax credits. This can be a credit against federal employee taxes for each calendar quarter equal to 50% of qualified wages. This is with respect to any employee may not exceed $10,000 per calendar quarter. And just as you're going to see, as I spoke of earlier, if you take the PPP, you cannot be eligible for this. One thing that I am really advising everybody is, I get, especially with tax credits and a lot of these other incentives I'm going to go through, they get complicated pretty quickly. Talk to your CPA, talk to your tax advisor, make notes of this. They're studying the stuff. They're going to know it better than most, and talk to them about how this can apply to you. Same with the delay of payroll taxes. You can get a deferment for which the amount will be due 50% on December 31st, 2021, the other half December 31st, 2022. This eligible deferral period begins March 27th and ends January 1st, 2021. And same thing, you aren't eligible for this if you take the PPP. A really big one, if you happen to be a C Corp, is a modification of net operating losses. I won't go through this in detail, but you are now allowed to carry back for 5 years versus just carrying forward. So this can be a pretty big incentive for those who are eligible. Also, there is the extension on the federal income tax filing out to July 15th, and the deferral for the payments. This has also been mirrored by the state, so that can be really supportive. But we get that also it's really beneficial to have this information done and on hand when applying to these loans. A couple other ones I'm going to go through just real quick. There's a modification on limitation of losses for sole proprietors and pass-throughs. There's also an increase to interest expense deductions from 30 to 50% of taxable income, and that's pretty significant. And also a technical amendment regarding qualified improvement property. Again, these are things you should be discussing with your CPA or tax advisor. A couple local programs that can really help. The Mid-Columbia Economic Development District is offering a bridge loan for $15,000 for those within the Scenic Gorge area. And this is what they're calling a last option loan. They want to see that you've gone and applied to the federal programs and talked to a local lender, but it's something that they can process very quickly if you have all your information ready to apply, to get you those funds as soon as they can, knowing that you need them right away. They're also offering 2 months deferral on existing note holders, and they administer funding through the Oregon Economic Board, and they have another loan program through them for $35,000. They're offering 3 month deferral on existing note holders, and they're both at 4.75%. Skamania also has a $40,000 loan program, which covers a lot of legal ventures. Gillum County has a small business stabilization grant, and if you are a business in Gillum County, there's no reason you shouldn't be applying for this if you can demonstrate financial hardship as a result from COVID. It's a fantastic program. It is being processed very quickly, so these funds are getting out to the community really, really quickly and to those who need it. So please apply if you're in Gillum County. It is a small pot right now, but hopefully there'll be more in it in phase 2 funding. Business Oregon has a number of programs as well. I'm not going to go through all of these individually, but if you're eligible, they can be really beneficial. They can be fairly substantial as well. They are making special provisions as a result of COVID to make these more available, to simplify the applications and streamline the process. So I would urge you to look into these if you fall under one of these descriptions for startups, microenterprise, R&D, prototyping, etc. There's also Workshare Oregon, and this has been a really valuable program, especially for this interim period where employees or employers need some employees to work, but may not need them all, or may only need them part-time, but are struggling to pay them. This allows you to bring employees back on or keep them on at a lower or reduced rate, or not rate, but a reduced percentage, anywhere from 20% at the least, but no more than 40%. And then Workshare reimburses you, the employer, for that difference. It's a really great program, can be up to 52 weeks. Your employee can't have already exhausted the benefits of this program, and they need to be continuously employed for 6 months, full-time or part-time for a year. I am not an unemployment expert by any means, but please, I know Lisa has some great resources for unemployment. Heather Fitch, our local resource from East Cascades WorkSource, can help provide some additional guidance if you need it. Some other programs, one that I just cannot advocate enough for, it is the Small Business Legal Clinic. It's through the Lewis and Clark School of Law. They have a program called the Rural Opportunity Program, and this is only available for rural businesses in Oregon, which is us. And through this program, you can get 10 hours of professional legal counsel for only $25. And that's not $25 an hour. That is a flat rate, $25. You get the same advisor throughout the entire session. And the only caveat is that you have to be at 50% medium household income. That ends up being just around or over $40,000 income, because this is targeted for those in financial need who can't afford these services otherwise. So if you qualify for that, I really urge you to apply. It can be leveraged in a lot of different ways, especially right now, but they do not provide litigation services, and they do provide this in both English and Spanish. So something to look into. There's also the Restaurant Employee Relief Fund. This is a $500 one-time grant. It's first come, first serve. I don't know if there's still funding left in that, but if you apply, or if you are eligible, I'd urge you to apply. Verizon Small Business Recovery Fund, they're offering $5 million in support. I just heard Miller Beer has $1 million program for restaurant workers. I don't know if it's, I think it may be just bartenders, something to that effect, something to look into if you think you might be eligible. So here are all the links to apply or to get detailed information on the things that I went through. So hopefully this can be a good resource for you. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. With that, Lisa, I'll pass it back to you. Let me open.
So Greg, we do have some questions in the chat. Are you able to access the chat?
Yes. Okay.
We'll start with those and then we can open it up to anybody who is on the phone.
Okay, Lori asks, will we be able to roll our existing MCED loan into this in the future? Do we use our existing confirmation number when we are reapplying? I'm not exactly sure, Lori, what you're referring to. If you're talking about rolling your existing MCED fund into another MCED loan, possibly. That's something that you can talk to MCED about. If you were talking about rolling your MCED loan into the PPP or the EIDL, no, you cannot. They're completely separate and you cannot refinance one into the other. If you are talking about reapplying to the EIDL loan for your confirmation number, no, you just reapply brand new. It's a new program. I don't think they even give you the, I don't know if they give you the option to put in your confirmation number. If they do, you can try that. If it processes, then great. If not, just reapply, starting anew through the EIDL program and their new application online. Scott asks, I heard local lender shut off application already. Is that true? Are there lenders that are accepting applications locally? That is true to some degree. I know Columbia has temporarily shut down their incoming applications. I don't know if they're going to open it back up or not. I bet Lisa has more information on that. And yes, there are other local lenders. I know Key Bank is still taking applications, and there probably are several others. Lisa?
So I actually have attached a PDF into the chat that went to everybody. I have not been able to call all of our local banks. That is on my list to do today after I got this. But that is a list from Merkley's office as to banks that are non-local, they are Oregon-based, that are taking apps, whether there's a list of if you're an existing customer who are still taking applications. Then there's a list that if you're not an existing customer who is taking applications. Great. So there is that list. I put it up there so you guys can all download that. I will be reaching out to our banks after this phone call and with our local branches and seeing who is still taking applications. I know that FB, First Interstate, is taking applications if you're an existing client. That means you've got a checking setup. You use them as a depository, not necessarily as already have a loan through them. So also when you talk to your bank and they say they're not, they're only taking existing customers, ask them what their definition of existing customer is. Some of those are basing on if you have a loan with them, and some of those are just basing it is whether you have a checking and depository relationship with them. So double check with your bank what that definition is. So just be patient with them. They're being mandated and regulated by different things. Even though we've asked our state and federal to relax those, not all of that has trickled down to our banks itself. So they still have to be compliant and do what is supposed to be done so that our monies are safe. So please keep that in mind as you work with them. And then as I get more information and I find that out, I will actually email this group out, but the chamber will also be mailing that out to our entire membership, because our goal is not to flood the banks, not to tick off, and not to be mad at your bank, but to get help for our businesses. So we will be doing what we can. We'll be working with Greg too, that we have current information between the two of us and getting that out, and working with MCED also. Greg and I will be on a phone call later today with MCED, the Regional Resiliency Team, which I'm sure this issue is going to be coming up, and what can we do to help our businesses through that. So Greg, I'm gonna ask you one question real quick, because one of those was mine, and then I know Adolfo has just put in a question also for you. Have you heard of any employers being successful and having the share work program actually implemented?
I have not.
Okay.
Like I said, I am not a unemployment specialist. It's really not a realm that we focus a lot of attention on. We focus more on the employees or employers and the businesses. But it sounds like you may have some insight on that.
So I heard from 2 employers who applied for this work share 3 weeks ago, and they still don't even have any confirmation or anything, which we know the system is backed up, which is still frustrating. I understand from the WorkSource point of view, but I also see that we have employees and employers that there's nothing happening, and they've laid their employees off in good faith that they would take care of this with the work share, and there's nothing. So I've got some emails in. I'll be hopefully talking to Heather with Equib and with the WorkSource to see what there is. Maybe there's a different way to do this process so that we can get monies into the hands of the employees, so that we can just have a better state of mind on all different levels. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and handle Adolfo's question that he just put up.
Great. Thanks for that information. And I know how frustrating that is, because it on paper is such a good program, but it's not worth a lot if you can't apply it or take advantage of it. Adolfo is asking, is the EIDL loan based on income or revenue for 2019? When you apply to the EIDL, they'll ask you for both that information, and it's my understanding the SBA will be basing that on your income, so your profit, not your gross. I could be wrong on that, but because they have not provided specific guidance in how they're calculating the loan amounts, but that's what we understand, and we have heard of a couple loans that have gotten approved, and folks who've spoke to SBA lenders, and that's what they have come back with us, stating that it was their income minus expenses. If the EIDL loan is based on 2019, does that mean you need to have filed your taxes? No, it does not. They're not going to ask for your tax returns, so just calculate those as best as you can. And it's a really basic application in terms of what they're asking, so you don't really need. Can you apply for the EIDL directly through the SBA, or do you have to use a lender like PPP? No, it's only through the SBA. They're the only place you can apply through the EIDL. It's a completely separate program from the PPP, and local lenders have nothing to do with that. They can take that debt and roll it into the PPP, but it can't be the other way around, and you have to have applied through the SBA. Last question. So if you have no profit in 2019, should you still apply for the EIDL? Yes, you should. The SBA can certainly, these are being reviewed by people. So they're individuals that are reviewing these applications, and they're certainly following a formula, but they can certainly look at your case and provide extenuating circumstances. And again, they're not providing 100% clarity on how they're calculating the loan amount. So in your case, they may include your gross. So yes, you should apply, and you can be eligible for that $1,000 grant or more, depending if you have employees, and that's free money. So what we understand from the federal government, it's going to be viewed as not as taxable income. So you shouldn't have to pay taxes on it from the federal perspective. We have gotten no guidance on any of this in terms of how the state is going to view this from the State Department of Treasury. So we don't know. So we're certainly advising people to make a contingency in that respect in regards to state taxes, because they are at a huge deficit. So they may not be as forgiving. But yes, you should absolutely apply. It's a really easy application. And again, there's no way you can lose, in that you either get the $1,000 and that's free money, or you don't. If you get the loan in any amount, it's going to be better than nothing, because it's free money for at least a year before you start accruing interest. And so you can just sit on it and use it if you need it, hold it for emergency, pay it back before you start collecting interest. And even if you don't, it's the cheapest money you're going to get. And that's the same with the PPP. You're not going to get interest rates any lower than what you're getting through these two programs. I believe, oh, that is it. Oh, that was a thank you. You're welcome, Adolfo. I don't see any others, Lisa. One thing I did want to mention, if I can real quickly, that we are going to be having several other webinars with the DALs, as well as with other chambers. And that's going to include the next one that Katie is going to be setting up for us, is going to be based on managing a business in crisis. So what do we do now that we've applied? And like Lisa says, and I love it, how do we start working on our business and not just in it? And looking at the wider perspective of managerial and operational practices, managing your cash flow, looking at your suppliers, marketing communications, and business technology. In addition to that, we'll also be setting up a working virtual webinar that's going to be focused on appropriate business technology. How do you work with your staff as well as your clients virtual? So hopefully you'll find those useful, and Lisa and Katie will have more information. Lori has one more question. If I have a confirmation number, do I need to reapply? No, you do not. So there's a couple caveats with that, Lori. If you have a confirmation from the older application process, they are urging you to reapply, but we do know people who have been approved and are getting funding through the original application process. If that's the case for you, you will still hear from somebody. You will still have your loan processed. One thing to bear in mind, if you did apply through the old application process, this was before the grant was released, and you had that option to request in advance or the grant. So make sure when you talk to your SBA loan officer that you are requesting that, because just because you applied through the old application process doesn't mean you are not eligible for that. So just make sure you're keeping that in mind and asking the SBA loan officer when you talk to them for that.
So is there anybody who was not able to put in the chat box any questions that are online? If so, go ahead and unmute yourself and then ask your question. I'll take that silence as either you couldn't unmute yourself or there's no more questions. I know this is a lot of information. And again, I just so appreciate you coming on and working with us, Greg. and answering questions and providing up-to-date information. And please know, everybody, this is information that is changing hourly. We'll get a notice that here's the process, here's the app, and then the next thing is after lunch, we have a new process, a new application, and new information as to qualifications. So please be patient for us and with your banks and with our representatives and senators as they are fighting for you to try to get the best for you and for our businesses. I can tell you right now, Merkley and Wyden are working very hard and being very frank with the SBA and the U.S. Treasurer, along with our leadership, that what they rolled out is not efficient and not getting dollars into the hands of our businesses right now. They're already working on package 4. We're a little excited about that one because they're going to try really hard to include chambers finally into this process. But we're more excited because they're trying to make it even a little bit more streamlined, and the message is coming very loud and clear every day that this 3 to 5 week waiting period is not reasonable for our businesses, nor is it reasonable for the employees who have filed unemployment and still haven't received those benefits. So just keep informing us with the struggles that you're having, the hiccups that you're having, because if we don't know about them, we can't relay that message to the appropriate people. We are very fortunate that we have Nate Stice right here on the ground, who is the Regional Solutions Representative for the Governor's Office. He's working hand in hand with MCED, and they are working for the 5 counties in the Gorge. So we do have a team that is ready to take action and advocate for all of you. So if you do have those pieces, please convey that to any one of us so that we can pass on your message and try to get a resolution or at least a resource that you can be connected with to find some answers. So with that being said, if there's no more questions popping up, we appreciate you guys taking time. Again, Greg, thank you so much. And Katie, thanks for setting this all up for us. And we look forward. We'll be doing another session on Monday. And then again on Thursday. So be watching our Facebook, our community calendar. We're trying really hard to get all kinds of different information. Monday happens to be customer engagement. How do we do that? From a social distancing practice, and so that we don't lose what customers we do have. So those are all important things, and this is the time where most of our businesses are shut down. So this is where we can start working on our business. So again, thank you everyone, and have a great weekend and happy Easter.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Katie. Thanks all for attending. Good luck.